Donovan's calling from Texas. Donovan's a theist, pronouns are he, him, who says, if God doesn't exist, then where does love come from? Hey, Donovan, what makes you think love comes from anywhere other than our brain?
First off, I would like to, gentlemen, if you would like, if we could start off this off in prayer.
No.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, Donovan. Happy Mother's Day. Your question was, where does love come from? And I asked you a question, and you, either thinking it was amusing or whatever, decided let's start with a prayer. So let's not. Why do you think love is something that exists and has a source beyond our brain?
Sure. Yeah. Let me. I'm gonna turn off. I'm gonna move the live away because it's kind of distracting because I can hear.
Okay, I'm sorry if you weren't ready to actually be on the call-in show. Let's try this again.
Think that love doesn't come from anything other than the brain.
I'm sorry, Donovan. You have to start over. You were muted.
Okay. Sorry about that, sir.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question was, what makes me think as a Christian that where does love come from other than the brain? Correct?
Well, I didn't say anything about a Christian, but thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So as a theist, I guess I'm a Christian. As a theist, I believe that love, that Jesus is love incarnate, and when we look throughout Scripture, we do see that.
Donovan.
Yes, sir.
Donovan. I don't need you to tell me what you believe. The question was why. Are you saying that because you're a Christian, you think love comes from God? So before you were a Christian, what reason would you have to think that love comes from God?
Because prior to that, I don't believe that anyone that is outside of, I think anyone outside of a Christian and doesn't take the precepts of Jesus and God, that they don't know what love truly is.
Yes. So Donovan, I'm asking you, okay, I'm going to phrase this a fifth way. How do you know that love truly is only from God and not just an experience that humans have, whether there's a God or not?
I would answer the question with a question. If love doesn't come from God, where else does it come from? Are you saying it comes from the brain?
I'm saying it does not come from anywhere. Love is a label that we put on experiential brain states, emotions, just like we do with sadness or hunger or any number of things. These are things that brains do. You are adding to that there is a real love and a real source of love that comes from a being that you haven't demonstrated, and now you're asserting what is true love. And so once again, I don't have any reason to think that love is anything but an emotion we experience, and you're claiming it's more, and I'm asking why.
Yes. So the best way that I could describe that is I'm going to answer biblically as a Christian. I don't see out to any other religion.
No, Donovan.
No.
Donovan.
Okay. Yeah.
You're talking to two former Christians who know the Bible and know that the Bible is not going to possibly make a case at all for why you could justify that love comes from God, because we don't care what the book says. The book is not proof or evidence for the claim.
Okay. So you want me to answer outside of the book?
Yes, I would like a real, rational, evidence-based syllogism that demonstrates how love is more than merely an experience humans have and is instead necessarily sourced from a divine creator.
Sure. I'll give you an example without any type of scripture or anything. There are times when there's some people that I do not want to love. Correct. And I'm sure you guys have felt that before, where you guys do not want to love them. And I think when we talk about love being just an experience alone or an emotion, what about, let's just say I have a nephew who I love dearly, who he's my everything. And there's a day when I don't feel like loving him because he's acting up. And so my emotion and experience and my feeling is telling me that I'm angry with him because he's upset me. Now, what do I have to cling to? Like, what do I have to choose in order for me to love him regardless of how he's acting, even if I don't like it? Because my emotions are telling me man, I just do not want to love him right now because he's upsetting me and he's not getting it. He keeps asking.
So you think love is? So hold on, you're conflating things here, right? Because obviously there is the happy feeling type of love.
But what happens if I don't feel that?
No, hold on, Donovan.
Yes,
Donovan.
Sorry about that, sir. Sorry, sir.
But love can also be defined, and there's a myriad of different ways, and I wish we'd start with definitions. Love can also mean, right, wanting the best for someone, right? That is another form of being loving, right? I want the best for person X or people in general. And so you, as the uncle in that case, know that the best person, even though they currently don't have warm fuzzies for your nephew, that because you want the best for that person, you will continue to feed them and take care of them and all that kind of thing, right? That's just wanting the best for someone. Is there? Do you understand that that is entirely also a biological response, right? Like there's nothing divine about wanting the best for someone, even when that thing will make them temporarily sad, or make you temporarily sad.
My question is, where am I grabbing that truth from? That
no, sir. No, Donovan, stop. Listen to me very fucking carefully. You can ask as many questions as you want to say, where does that come from if not for God? You can find 500 ways to phrase your argument from ignorance fallacy. We are asking you, how do you demonstrate that this necessarily comes from a God? Simply saying you can't explain where it comes from does not in any way demonstrate that it necessarily comes from God. And you've already delved way into absurdity by suggesting that it is impossible to both love someone and be mad at them at the same time, which is absolute bullshit. And the fact, stop saying yup, stop talking. And the fact that you'd use that as a demonstration suggests that you have a misunderstanding about human psychology, because I asked you, how do you prove that love must come from God? And your entire case, which I'd let you go on about, is, well, there are times when I don't want to love someone. Well, congratulations. Even if
I'm trying to have a civil conversation with you, and you're
stop fucking talking.
Civil conversation.
You're now muted, and you'll be lucky if you get to speak again, because you intentionally interrupted me right there to suggest that I'm not capable of having a civil conversation when you're the prick who's interrupting me while I'm exposing your fallacies. Now, let me get back on track. Even if your personal belief in God acts as a MacGuffin that guides you to love people, even when you wouldn't otherwise normally want to love people, that is not a demonstration that God is the source of love. At most, it is a demonstration that the MacGuffin, a false belief, is the source of love. You have to demonstrate that love comes from God and only comes from God to make your case. You cannot show that it comes from your belief in God, because that is not God. Your belief in God is not God. I don't know why you felt the need to keep interrupting me and pretend that I'm incapable of a civil conversation instead of waiting for me to finish, unless you are just being dishonest. So we're back at the beginning. You think that love must come from God. We're asking you to demonstrate what the rational justification is, not the biblical one, not your personal belief, not how confused you are about it. What is the rational justification for saying that love can only come from God? Please continue.
Okay. I guess I would say I'm going to try not to ask a question, but I'm going to try to understand, because in order for me to make my case, I'm saying that love does not come from a divine being, but rather it is simply biological. Is from what I'm understanding that you're telling me, is that, Donovan, that love.
I'm muting you now, Donovan, because you're not doing this right at all. And now I think you're intentionally just trying to waste time, and that's not a good place. So let's try this again. I'm not asserting that love is merely biological. Let's pretend that Paul and I have no explanation for what love is or where it comes from. You're the one who is in here making a claim about where love necessarily comes from. And it is fallacious to shift the burden of proof away from your claim by suggesting, well, of course the butler did it. What other explanation is there? How do you explain love if it didn't come from the butler? How do you explain love if it didn't come from eating bananas? Your claim that love must necessarily come from God is absurd to me and is unjustified to me as claiming that love comes from eating bananas. You don't have to give me a preamble on how you're going to avoid questions. You don't have to talk about what Paul and I believe, because what Paul and I believe is completely irrelevant to what you believe and why. So we're going to ask you one final time, why should we be convinced that love must come from God?
Well, I'm kind of put in a corner here, but I guess I would just say that I can't really. I have nothing. I don't believe that as a human being, that when you are choosing to love someone, regardless of how you're feeling, if I don't feel like I love that person, but I have to choose to love them, I don't see what truth I can grab hold of in an atheistic worldview, in a Buddhistic worldview, in any type of worldview other than Christianity. I don't see how.
So, Donovan, I'm completely done with this call, but Paul might not be. So I want to make that clear that I'm going to let Paul keep talking to you. I'm going to unmute you, and I will not be interacting with you further because, once again, all you did was reframe your objections, your fallacious shifting of the burden of proof to say, oh, I don't want to ask a question and I don't want to say what's your explanation. I'm just going to assert that I don't see how you could explain love without God. Well, congratulations. Your failure to use any imagination or care about evidence does not make your point. But I'm going to let Paul interact with you because I no longer care to hear what you think, because you will not justify it with a why without being dishonest and suggesting that, you were fucking talking while you were muted. I'm so fucking done with you. Go ahead, Paul.
I didn't say anything. Sorry about that. I
You
didn't
were
mean to
talking when I fucking unmuted you, you liar.
I said thank you. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, sir.
So Donovan,
please forgive me.
Donovan,
I didn't mean to. Hi, Paul.
Donovan, hi. Would you agree that the categorization of what you just said is that you observe things that you put the label of love on in the world, and that includes, in your observation, occasionally doing things against your own self-interest or against your own mood, and as you observe those things, that you don't know what an explanation is, and so you feel justified in attributing that to God. Is that a fair categorization? Is that a fair way of saying what the position you presented? Because that seems to me what you presented.
Yes, Paul. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, what I was presenting, and you said it, you hit the nail on the head. And I understand that can be that argument can't really have like a real tangible evidence. But the reason that I was saying that was because as a Christian, and I'm sure you have many Christian viewers. And by the way, I admire your guys' work and what you guys are doing and the effort that you guys put into it. So I by no means am here to fight with you or argue with you, but rather just to seek to understand. And so what I really wanted to say was that can you, just for other Christian audiences who are also seeking truth, because I think it's great to wrestle with truth, is if what truth, as I'm assuming you guys are atheists, correct? Or you are, Paul? You're not a theist,
correct?
Okay, and so so I think like for the Christian viewers would be like if I'm choosing to love someone regardless of how I feel because they're making me angry, but I have to choose to love them in the midst of that because I genuinely care for them because I want the best for them. What truth am I going to grab a hold to that tells me, like, what standard am I going to grab a hold to?
Well,
say
hold on.
Still have to love them.
Let's posit, Donovan, that there is no truth to be learned from that. Is that a problem?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you? You said there is no truth to be learned from that?
Yeah. What if there is no deeper thing other than I am choosing against my own self-interest to serve someone in some way. Let's say there is no truth beyond that's the entirety of it. So what?
Okay, got you. Perfect. Got you. No, okay, so I love that. I think that helps me understand kind of how to explain more. So you're saying, what if there is no truth? What if it's just someone choosing to love someone regardless of how they feel? So my question would be, can that be problematic? And this is how my question would be. This is probably how it can be problematic. And you can rebuttal me on this or answer this for me. Could that be problematic? Let's just say if someone says, okay, well, today I'm going to beat my neighbor. I'm going to beat him up. Okay?
Hold on, Donovan. Is this Donovan?
Yes.
Is this going to be an appeal to utility, an appeal to like the way we want the world to be?
No. This is going to be appeal to if we give everyone the choice to choose how they love someone in the midst of wanting the best for someone. Can it be problematic if someone says, "Well, I'm choosing the best for this person is to harm them. That's just what I'm choosing."
Yeah, no. So Donovan, you just did what you promised you weren't going to do. You're appealing to wouldn't the world be a bad way that you don't prefer? If there wasn't a grander truth, so an appeal to that the world would be worse if that's the way it was. Isn't you understand that that's not actually an appeal to how it is? You're now just you're calling to an emotion of like, wouldn't it be terrible? And I'm like, well, maybe it would be terrible if everyone decided that that harm was the best way forward. Sure, that would. I don't think that would be great. But that tells me nothing about. That tells me nothing at all, right? About whether there's a God behind it.
Yeah.
That it creates a world we don't prefer is irrelevant.
Okay, I got you. So then, as an atheist, and again, I'm a Christian, and so I'm glad that we can have dialogue because I believe that it's great that we have dialogue. Are you saying as an atheist, saying it can be bad? I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, is that their choice? Is that what you're saying? Like it can be bad if someone chooses to.
I'm saying that bad is also a label that we put on things. Bad is a label we give to things that we don't prefer, right? And good is the label we give to things that we do prefer. And some people prefer different things, which is why you have to always clarify, what do you mean by bad? What do you mean by good? I'm saying that whether something is bad and whether something is good by whatever label and whatever standards you want has absolutely nothing to do with the truth of the way things are. And what Matt and what Matt's been trying to ask you the entire time is not why should we prefer that there be God that grounds love. It's how can you demonstrate that there is a God that grounds love? And you've been reverting back the entire time to appeals to preference. Do you at least understand that that's what you've been doing, and agree that?
I think. I think. Yes, I hear you, and I agree to an extent. How about that? Is that all right? I agree to an extent. And I think I just was trying to give it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Tell me what they're. Yeah, are we working towards the same goals? Are you at any point in this call attempting to say why it is the case as opposed to why you prefer it's the case? If you don't, if you're not intending to ever at this point in this call explain why it is the case, regardless of anyone's preference, then we probably could just end it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll make this case then. I don't believe that a human being. I don't see how a human being can if there's no truth at all. Let's just say there's no truth, right?
Well,
that everyone.
That's not what I said. But carry on.
They're bad in. You didn't say that. That's not what I'm saying. You just said, what if? Like, you didn't say that. That wasn't your claim. So please forgive me. I didn't mean to misrepresent you. You didn't say that. You didn't say that.
Let's get to it.
So, so I would say this, that if there is, who define, I think it'd be problematic if we don't agree that love comes from God and nothing else. It would be problematic if we don't obey his precepts, because if we leave objective truth up to the human being, someone can say, well, I'm going to harm my neighbor And I think that that's the best way for them, and that's the best way to love.
Okay,
them. There's no one that can. There's no one that. There's no one that.
Donovan. I asked you if you intended to make an appeal that wasn't to whether something is the way you'd prefer it or whether you not prefer it, and you just literally just gave me a literal thing about telling me how bad things would be, how you would not prefer the way to go. And that seems to be what you're basing your thing on. There's so many problems what you did. You spoke about objective morality, and then you at the same time you said, what if one person has objective morality X and another person has objective morality Y, which then it's not objective, right? If there's two possible flavors, it can't be objective. Donovan,
I apologize.
I didn't mean. So what I want you to do, call again someday. Think about you listen back to this. Everything you've said is I prefer it to be a certain way. Therefore, everyone else should also want it to be a certain way. Not only Jonathan doesn't want it to be that way, that must be the way it is. And that is how you're arguing right now. All of your arguments have been about what your preference is.
Yeah.
So think about that.
And so I think towards the end, I was saying prefer because you wanted me to make a statement, like a case. But in the beginning, I was just saying, where can love come? Where do you grab hold of? What truth do you grab hold of? If you're choosing to love someone, even though you don't want to, what standard do I hold to say, no, I have to love this person?
The only standard I think you need for that the only standard is preferring flourishing, which is empathy, and wanting to reduce harm, which is also empathy. And those are entirely, as far as I can tell, and I'm not on trial here, because you didn't, but I'm sitting here like it's so obvious to me that those two things are sufficient to generate the same moral instincts that you have. But none of that means anything, right? None of that demonstrates that either my view or your view is rooted in anything other than our preference and what our biology tells us. So Donovan, go back, listen to this again, think about whether you can come up with some kind of argument that isn't just, I want it to be God, therefore it must be God. And try again on a different show. Thanks for calling.
Sure. Thank you. Hey, Paul. Thank you so much. And Matt was your partner's name. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me on the show. And I love that we can have healthy dialogue. And I do hope that we can have another conversation again, and maybe one that's offline. Maybe because I'm trying to understand. And so I admire you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Think about it first. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Y'all have a great day. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
We have no callers right now.
We have no callers right now.
I actually prefer it because the only theist who's going to call in is someone who will not actually engage and address this in an honest fashion, because right down to the very end, it was, hey, what can I appeal to that tells me I must love this person when I don't want to? Nothing. Because there is no necessary requirement that you love anyone. The very notion that you must love someone that you don't love is not only creepy, but it is completely unjustified. So he's conflating this idea of, I don't want to love this person, but God says I must, so I will. That's the excuse that he gives for saying, wow, I'm really upset with that person, or I don't like that person, or I don't want to be nice to that person, but something within me realizes that would be bad. And the thing that's within you that realizes that would be bad is perhaps empathy, but also it may be a complex recognition that the world is better when we cooperate and worse when we're in conflict. That simple aspect of game theory, that truism, that this is the better way, is not always easy to recognize. But the very notion that there needs to be a source for love, and that source also needs to fill your desire to justify loving someone when you don't want to, is the exact same thing everybody else has done with a God. It's a God of the gaps. You don't understand human emotions. You feel things. They're conflicted. They're confusing. You really can't find a good reason to care about this person, and yet you still do. And so what's the explanation for that? For me, it's really simple. the reason I still care about them is because they're a human being who has value in part because of what they might do for me and the rest of the world. You can get to altruism and benevolence through purely selfish motivations. I can want absolutely nothing but what is best for me. And as it turns out, because I'm a human being that has to share space with other people, what's best for me is frequently what is best for someone else. Even if there's a short-term sacrifice on my part, like, well, I'm not going to go down that. It's a cheap shot. Even if there's a short-term sacrifice on my part, I'm looking at the long game. And it's like, we can't tell who's going to change their mind until, even after we talk to them, because maybe that caller's never going to change their mind. Maybe they're going to change it in 20 minutes when something Paul said clicks in. Maybe they're going to change it next week if they call in, or the week after that if they call in. Who knows what it's going to be? But what I can say is that for me personally, if I've explained something and then explained it again, and I have to keep asking you to focus and answer the question that's asked, and you don't, you're not ready to learn yet. You might be really desirous of some learning, but until you're ready to focus and listen and say, oh, here's the question, let me try and answer it. But when you're just preparing, you've got this idea stuck in your head, and now you're going to go with a script, which is, okay, I don't understand why that is. How could you explain it as an atheist? Well, atheism is irrelevant to that. I can talk to you about human psychology and give you what the justification is, but I'm not the one that called in asserting that love has a source and that source is God. Does sadness have a source? How about hunger? How about lust? Does love come from God, but lust comes from Satan? And if there's a second agent out there that can essentially provide me with emotional experiences and serves as the source for that, why is that a problem? Is lust a problem? Because, for example, the Bible suggests that lust is a problem, and yet lust is absolutely the foundation for 90 some odd percent of the population's existence. I'm sure there are always exceptions, but generally, all of us are the product, or most all of us are the product of lust. Oh, yes, but that was lust within the bounds of marital beds for some, maybe. But you know what? For the people who are opposed to a woman's right to choose, the people who are opposed to abortion access and abortion as healthcare, even in the cases of rape and incest, they're going to look at a young girl who is an abused victim who's pregnant and say that God has a plan for that baby. You shouldn't kill it. That baby exists and is part of God's plan. And so the lust and perversion that sourced that child sourced something that God wanted. So there's this intricate tapestry that you've got to navigate around when you start suggesting that love is sourced by God, but lust is sourced elsewhere. Not only does it deny the fundamental aspects of our psychological makeup, but it is in conflict with your own beliefs. It's really, really strange. But it's like you begin with this, hey, where does love come from? Why not begin with, as Paul wanted, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. But let's talk about it, because within psychology, within psychology, there are a number of different categories of things that we list as love. There's a familiar love, a family love. I love Paul. Paul's a friend of mine. I don't love Paul in a romantic sense. Sorry, bud. I don't love Paul in a sex sense. Sorry, or you're welcome. But we recognize that there's a difference between a familial love, a romantic love, and an erotic love, because you can have romance and be desiring that sort of connection without desiring sex. This is something that a lot of people get confused about. A lot of asexual people, they're, oh, these people are weird, they don't want sex. That's not what being ace is. And similarly, people get this confused about people on the autism spectrum, that, well, they can't experience emotions, and they're basically just the rough equivalent of a psychopath. No, that's wrong too. And it would be so beneficial if people would go out and stop running on their assumptions and actually investigate some of this. Because when we say this is love, and by the way, even within Christianity, there are different loves. There's agape love, which is the love that God is supposedly the source of, the love that I don't think exists. But even within the realm of Christianity, there's agape love and then philia love. And I forget what the third one is. It may be eros. But in any case, they already recognize that same category of feelings and experiences have different uses and potentially different sources. Not that they are sourced by something other than the brain, apart from agape love, which is like God's conduit to love despite all this. But that type of love, I have no reason to think it exists. And so while the caller is sitting here saying, what is the thing that tells me I must love someone even when I don't? Delusion, wishful thinking. There isn't. And the notion that love ought to be a certain way is another assumption in that conversation, that, oh, I ought to love someone. That's a religious instruction without grounding. There's no imperative in the universe that you should care about anybody else. It's all conditional. I should care about someone else because I like them. I should care about someone else because they have value to me or others. I should care about someone else because this creates a better society when we care about each other. You can come up with any sort of pragmatic justifications you want, but there's no imperative from the universe that says, thou must love, or just like there isn't anything that says thou shalt not steal. The Bible says that because that's how people try to encourage other people to do the right thing when their brains prevent them from seeing that it's the right thing. I'm here to correct the brain, not God. If God wants correction, he can come talk to me himself, and that hasn't happened.
Thank you for watching that clip. If you enjoyed it, perhaps you should join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
At patreon.com/calltheline.